All right, so this is a suggestion via a donation. The name of the video is Why U.S. Cities Are Going Broke. I'm sure there are many, many reasons, guys, but all right, let's check it out. Like specifically coming out of like the 19 when everything shut down. I mean, that's basically the cause of most of our financial issues, guys. When everything shut down during what happened in 2019, guys, right? That's the cause. Most of the causes. But all right, let's see where this takes us, guys.
Major cities across the U.S. are in financial trouble.
I think we can all agree on that we're broke.
We're seeing sales tax come down, we're seeing business tax come down, and stays in our hotels come down.
One study says that 53 of the largest cities in the United States haven't generated enough revenue to cover their bills.
Clearly, there are significant capital needs, across the U.S.
Several cities spent years taking on debt to fund services. And now, some public officials are reining in spending.
We've got to be careful because you don't want to get into too much debt.
Rising debt may lead to dirtier streets, fewer public services, and tough decisions from public officials that need to make ends meet.
The cities that are in trouble, they have a cash flow problem. They may be able to count on some revenue growth. Increasing taxes may be an option. Short of that, they're going to have to cut services or benefits.
Why are so many U.S. cities going broke? And what will that mean for residents of our biggest and busiest places?
Let's go.
Running a major city is expensive. For an example, look at New York City. With over 8 million residents spread across 5 counties, it has to pay for more than most.
It's a dense, diverse place that requires a significant investment in the public realm.
Brad Lander is Comptroller of New York, the top accountant for the city. Comptrollers review every financial aspect of city government. In the case of New York, that includes over 1,700 parks, over 200 library branches, 11 acute care public hospitals, 472 subway stations, and about 177,000 affordable housing units. Like many other parts of the U.S., New York City sells municipal bonds to fund many of these projects.
The city's bonds are like your mortgage, for long-term expenditures, something that you're going to use over generally 10, 20, 30 years. You borrow for it.
Here's how it works. Investors foot the bill for the city's general obligations. The city promises to pay them back later on with interest.
Right.
We pay the interest on our bonds, but then we can use those bonds to build schools and invest in our water and sewer infrastructure and subsidize affordable housing. But then we've got to be careful because you don't want to get into too much debt.
Some experts...
Guys, municipal bonds were at one time like a really good way to invest in certain places, I'd say. New York City, in terms of New York City, definitely, for a really long time. Nowadays, I'm not sure, like specifically with the crisis that's happening there, with the recent influx of migrants, I would not say that it's as lucrative as it once was, I'd say. If you want to get in on that type of money, you're going to need to do something that can do something for the migrants. That's basically the only way to actually make any real money coming out of any type of, if you're going to be hedging your bets off of a city, let's say. But I would not do any type of municipal bonds currently.
It's believed that cities and state governments in the U.S. are selling bonds to spend more money than they can pay back.
Yep.
In our study, we gave the city of New York an F grade.
Sheila Weinberg is the founder and CEO of Truth in Accounting, a nonprofit that says they promote transparency in public accounting.
What we found is that the city has $177 billion of debt. This represents $61,800 per taxpayer.
New York City calculates a smaller debt than the estimate from Truth in Accounting.
So right now, we've got about $96 billion of debt outstanding. Currently, the way the debt ceiling works, we could borrow up to about $125 billion. So we have $25 to $30 billion of room.
The group claims that
Bro, you're already in debt.
many so-called sinkhole cities have more bond debt obligations than they're reporting publicly.
Yeah.
They focus on underfunded pensions and retiree health benefits that are owed to public employees, but backed by investments in the stock market.
We see pension and retiree healthcare debt problems in most major cities. We also find that with the 50 states.
As of 2024, U.S. pensions are underfunded by $1.6 trillion, according to researchers at Stanford. They point out that pension contributions are invested in the stock market, then paid back to employees for the rest of their lives.
Our pension funds are fiscally sound. They're 80% funded, and we have a path to get them to be 100% funded over
Oh,
the
yeah?
next decade or so.
If public officials invest
Like, guys, when it comes to pensions, I understand the allure of it, right? I personally would prefer to do something, Roth IRA oriented at least, or some type of IRA, SEP IRA, just an IRA generally. That seems to give a better yield than just hedging all of everything into the pension, specifically with the facts that these can go away kind of at any time, occasionally, right? Outside investments are always a much better option, specifically for like specifically if you have like large liquid assets. At least you can kind of do a lot of things. At least, right? I think nowadays most people are doing like real estate and things like that. But I never trusted the concept of a pension, guys. Personally, at least, I'd rather just invest on the outside for my own for things that I care about more so than what they care about.
invest funds
That not and they don't all the time you don't actually make solid amount of returns on these.
in stock markets and the bet goes the wrong way, it can make or break a city. For example, retiree payment obligations are part of what sent Detroit into bankruptcy in 2013.
This
In
is
the
what I'm-
fallout,
this is what I'm
Detroit
talking
temporarily revised its pension program to limit payouts to former employees. This decision let the city put more money into its reserves.
Even
Yeah,
though that's an
pass.
expense that was incurred and they have that debt, it doesn't have to be included in the balanced budget requirement. If I don't pay that invoice, I don't have to include it in my balanced budget.
Truth in Accounting points out that cities like Chicago, Philadelphia, Houston, Portland, and Miami all owed more money than they held in assets in fiscal year 2022. That year, stocks sank in the worst year since the Great Recession, before recovering. As a result, cities from coast to coast have had to tamp down on spending to balance their budgets.
And that's the reason why a lot of people move their money out of the stocks and into real estate. That's the exact reason. What do we know about real estate? It can kind of always go up for the most part, right? And if you own enough of it, you can control the market. And by controlling the market, you kind of can control the actual value of your assets. And that in itself is why a lot of people with large quantities of money would prefer to do real estate, which then, in fact, harms and creates the housing crisis, guys, right? So it's a double-edged sword here, guys. By these people that can afford to drop, a couple $100,000 on a piece of property just to rent it out, they're making a bigger return on their investment than the stock market kind of would in the same amount of time, bro. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, how are you?
In New York, Mayor Eric Adams entered 2024 with a $7 billion budget gap, largely attributed to an increase in asylum seekers and migrants arriving in the city. He proceeded with spending cuts dubbed PEG, a program to eliminate the gap.
These actions, along with an unexpectedly strong economy, help balance fiscal year 25.
oh yeah,
But we're not out of the woods.
So what the mayor announced was a series of 5% cuts that add up a little shy of 15%. A lot of those cuts that are being felt very, palpably by New Yorkers.
For example, the city comptroller says funding cuts for public education will end some class offerings at the City University of New York, while increasing class sizes. Additionally, many libraries in the city are cutting their hours.
There's not one neighborhood library left that's still open 7 days a week. Obviously, if you work during the week and the weekend is when you can get there with your
Too
kids,
bad.
that can be really devastating.
yeah, and guys, and that's the exact reason why a lot of people, specifically coming from Manhattan or in any of the 5 boroughs that surround it, basically are like, listen, we understand there are people coming from other countries. They're flooding the area, right? Why should they, as in the people who have been paying taxes since they can remember, right, suffer with all these program cuts, specifically libraries and schools and all these other things that they have been paying into, parks, right? Why are all of these things being taken away from the people that have been paying taxes and going towards people who have never paid a single tax dollar in their entire life to the United States of America? And that's kind of the internal issue that's happening in Manhattan and Chicago currently.
The mayor's budget also cut funding for programs that provide an alternative to incarceration, a policy that reduced strain on New York City's jails.
So you have to make hard choices in budgeting, but
More
it
crime on
really
the
is
street,
important
basically.
not to be penny wise and pound foolish.
The city governments of Portland, Oregon, Washington, D.C., and Los Angeles are all cutting back on spending too.
You have upward pressure on wages and downward pressure on city revenues. That creates a gap that we are facing right now that we need to fill. So we're paying for positions that are not filled and are delivering no services. That's a practice that we need to pull back on if we're going to have a balanced budget.
And LA probably has it the worst, or California in general, specifically with the mandatory minimum wage being increased to the point where it has been. Yeah, it's really good for the people who are going to be able to find work, but now there are going to be less people actually in position to get any type of job at all. And most of these jobs are going to end up being pushed to automation. Right? Like, think about that for a second here, guys. You're going to have one person inside of every single fast food restaurant or things that are food oriented. Because I can buy a robot one time and have that robot do exactly what the human is doing. And all we need is one person inside that building to basically take care of that one robot. So there we go. So we went from people actually having jobs, right, getting paid, to now one or two people in every single building. Listen, I understand the fight for 15 and all other things, but you have to understand how it goes at the end of the day. In terms of business, a businessman is going to cut their biggest expense. And what is it going to be? It's going to be you. You're going to be the biggest expense when they can buy one robot one time and never have to pay it again, except for maintenance.
The Los Angeles County government sees stagnant revenue growth in 2024 and beyond, which it says will sharply limit its ability to fund existing obligations, let alone new programs. And in Portland, leaders see a fiscal cliff ahead as there are no funds left to address existing financial issues.
The demand for resources continues to surpass availability within the city.
Cities often use credit to raise money from investors in the bond market. Portland, for example, has a AAA credit rating, which could make it an enticing place to park cash.
Interest earned by owners of municipal bonds is exempt from federal taxation, which helps to lower the overall cost of borrowing for state and local government issuers.
3 major agencies grade cities on their ability to repay their debts.
So Fitch's credit rating scale, it's expressed using the categories of AAA to BBB for the investment grade category, and then from BB to D, which signifies junk or speculative grade.
Yeah. Cities like Chicago can spend years in the speculative grade junk bond category. The city received an upgrade on its ratings by continuing to make advance payments toward future pension obligations.
We balanced this budget without increasing the city's base property tax. I was elected to end this government's addiction to the regressive taxation that has pushed working families to the brink, and that begins today.
I believe this is a big problem throughout the country. The voters think, oh, they must be living within their means, and they're not. But if you can go ahead and use budgeting gimmicks and not have to raise taxes, but still provide a large amount of services and benefits, that's obviously beneficial to elected officials.
Other factors like climate change could be making public administration more expensive.
We've started in our own bond underwriting to reflect on the city's climate risk and try to be clear and transparent about it. If we're going to have coastal resiliency for protection against storms and hurricanes, that's the new normal amidst climate change, and we do need to make investments.
The leaders of cities can sometimes rely on the federal government to bail them out, especially when crises hit.
Oh, yeah?
I think during the pandemic, there was, of course, very real anxiety about whether the model that is New York City would continue to work.
New York City received an estimated $28.6 billion in federal grants during the pandemic from a wide variety of programs.
That money, even though they're claiming that those direct federal dollars went for COVID relief, that allowed them to use other money for additional spending.
Right.
Kind of was a bailout for these cities and states.
Tax revenues are projected to decline in New York City in fiscal year 2024, something that's happened only 3 times in the past 4 decades.
Yeah, bro, people are leaving. Like, why would you be in a place like New York City or any major city being overtaxed, crowded, right? You have no driveway, guys, right? And you're living like this. It stinks everywhere you go. It smells like urine in elevators. Guys, why would you spend $5,000 to $7,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. Why would you do that when you can literally have anything else anywhere else? So yeah, I would expect that this number is going to rise, because I'm telling you, people are starting to realize. And a lot of this is happening with over the last couple of months here, guys, right? People are, in fact, leaving all of these cities that are being, basically repopulated by migrants, guys. And the fact that the bail reform exists in this manner, people that are there actually committing crime are being just let go immediately. So what is the purpose of living in a place that is lawless, expensive, and smells like urine? I don't know.
There's real urgency, and I think people are not really appreciating that.
The city could find new revenue using old tools. Take, for example, property taxes. The average American will pay over $165,000 in property taxes over the course of their lifetimes. The rates are highest in states near the largest cities, including Metro New York, Greater Boston, and Chicago. In lieu of tax hikes, the city could raise its debt limit, as proposed by New York State's leaders to address ongoing capital needs.
We project the city could hit that ceiling by about 2029, 4 or 5 years from now.
To the extent that, they can issue debt to finance a portion of their capital plan, that could mean, unsafe, school conditions, overcrowding, certainly roads, infrastructure, bridges, tunnels are all part of the capital plan. And so, there's risk associated, with an inability to issue debt.
The state and local governments have balanced budget requirements so they don't get unsustainable debt. I think that almost these requirements give people a false sense of security because the elected officials say year after year that the budget's balanced when they're using budgeting and accounting gimmicks to truly not balance the budget.
Right, they're faking it. And then when the next person gets into office, they're blamed for what the previous person did. It's just a cycle of nonsense. All right. Why U.S. cities are going broke? Guys, people are leaving the cities. And the more that happens, the less they get yearly in taxes or theft generally. In terms of property taxes, at least. Property taxes are wild, bro. Like, you save up all this money for a down payment, you put money into a piece of property, you buy that property, and then once you pay off that property, it's yours, right? It's never yours. It's the government still. You're still paying taxes on it. It's never yours. Keep that in mind, bro. Even though you just bought the house, it's never yours. Because, bro, how about this? You don't believe me? Don't pay your taxes for 3 years, and I'll buy it. If that makes any sense. Don't pay your taxes for 3 years, then it's going to come up in a tax deed sale. Okay? Your taxes. Let's say $3,000 a year. $3,000. So $9,000 is going to show up in the tax deed sale. And what I'm going to do, or some random other person, they're going to find out that house is worth like $500,000 and you owe $9,000 in state taxes and property taxes. You go to that auction, you buy the debt, you wait, I don't know, a year or so, right? This case, and then if you don't pay that back to me with 20% interest, generally, I will take your house, the entirety of it, right? That's how that works, bro. It's the craziest thing in the world. Tax deed sales. Check it out in your local area and just be like, oh no, this person hasn't paid taxes in 3 years. I can go get a loan for that amount of money, pay it, get a 20% return, and then own the land and the property? Oh, guys. And that's the problem. Okay, that's the problem with property taxes, to me at least, because it can ruin a family. Like, I've seen one recently, for example. I check tax deed sales all of the time. A guy just purchased a house, okay, but the previous owner apparently purchased the lot behind the house. And then he fenced his house and the lot. When the guy bought the house, but but he didn't know that the lot behind it that was also fenced with his property doesn't actually belong to him. So as he's paying property tax, he's paying his property tax on his house, not the secondary lot that's behind it. So that secondary lot, basically his backyard with his pool and shed, right, that's on it right now. is up in the tax deed list, guys. All right. So now someone is going to purchase this man's backyard, guys. All right. That's what happens. That's how crazy the concept of property tax is. All right. But obviously the person who sold the house should have told the owner of that purchased it, like, hey, this plot of land is not yours. All right. I'm not selling this piece of it. This piece is still mine, or something like that. And so I nicely wrote a letter to the guy, right, pretty recently, and said, listen, you don't own your backyard. You need to probably check the tax deed sales because your backyard is up for sale. And all they wanted was $1,000 for it. We're talking about that piece of land was worth $300 a year in property taxes because it was raw land, right? And 3 years without paying it, apparently, even though the owner before wasn't paying it, I guess, right? $900 to purchase this man's backyard. Yes. That's how crazy these things are. So be careful out there. This is why I say property tax is kind of a scam. But all right, listen, you guys all have an absolutely amazing day. Enjoy your day thoroughly. Guys, before we go, are you guys subscribed to the other channels? Logical Movie Reviews with Mr. L. Boyd along with Mr. L. Boyd Music. Both are found in the description. Check it out.